I've decided to pull together my notes for a talk video rather than write another essay. One of my friends thinks that as a communications um, experienced person, um, that my talk videos sometimes hold more resonance for people because they can assess the thoughtfulness that I put into them. Truthfully, I think the written word can sometimes work better for that because it allows you to stop, read again, and compare thought processes with your own. You don't just turn off and take in. But this is liable to be a little bit long and maybe even have some pauses because I have to think about some of my notes. But one of my points of departure in my writing has often been the nerve damage that was done to me by the Pitt neurological researcher Wattenmaker, an Israeli, working with the rock band King Crimson, and the lifelong harassment I have been subject to by this dishonorable organization. They think 24/7 and put together a great publishing house to capture the minds and the souls of the young. They were particularly prominent in the 70s in the United States, and one of them put out an image of a dragon with a little girl sleeping in its mouth called the Big Friend. It was drawn in the woods during Nazi Germany by a woman named Sulamith Wolfling, who also did a picture called Blumen and Blotter, which may be more than ironic in that the Blumenfeld group in Pittsburgh produced their pen person, Gail Burston, who wrote the Texas school book for the Kennedy assassins that Seattle brought me here to confiscate. The premise is of apparently knowing that the Grand Museum Larson, John Schulman, who's featured in Smithsonian for his thefts this month, was the source of this dishonorable person, Robert Fripp, and his partner, Peter Sinfield, and the horrible crime that they were committing towards me. And they document force feeding me this nerve agent on threat of death as a blotter acid. So Blumen and blotter, you can see the smoldering penmanship in these big fronts. Now, we came into the COVID bomb situation with the presentation of Greta Thunberg, and the idea that science was her big friend in the matter of the climate change issue. And you have to wonder, when you look at the script and the seduction of me as a little boy and a turnaround system on behalf of the Axis, avenging the little boy bomb by attacking an Eisenhower child. My father knew Eisenhower. This is one of the greatest flag burning incidents in American history. They actually targeted an American symbol, castrating Uncle Sam, so to speak. And you have this Judas Donald Trump kissing the American flag and hating what we stand for. It's clear that his idea of America first is to destroy America first, of course. And the spirit world is an occupied zone in this system of little girl, this turnaround system, which has the, crack in the door of the shack where they seduce me, where an eye comes in, like on the cover of the Holocaust cinema book. So the voyeurism of the parochial right wing is supposedly the angry father. And the spirit world is an occupied zone in the sense that, very ironically, they put together the Seattle support cluster, recovery cluster, around a picture of Clint Eastwood autographed like a smoking gun. 1964, his film that came out was predicated on Yoyembo, which I've reported again and again these people are using. And a friend of E. Howard Hunt, and disciple of Oliver North, and I'm supposed to just take stock of the fact that their faith in whatever Christianity or something, their faith in the angry father of the Old Testament is so powerful that my life means nothing to them. They're finished with using me for production of sex films, which is what was going on Mount Desert Island when they launched the AIDS attack and used me as an object of derision. They're finished with me, so why should I care if they castrate me, is sort of their message. And so you have this situation where they relegate your life to meaningless because of their faith. And they say, well, both ends are burning because the only way you can get out of it is by lying about your, anger about it. You have to be a non-violent two-faced because a person like you should stand up for yourself. Well, here I am basically saying that what they did was impact an involuntary character defect. They knew the nerve agent was in there, a personality change nerve agent. And then they came on to me with Rosa, who was pretty, and I loved her. She was sensitive. I thought she loved me. I liked them at the time, so I thought they were trying to get through to me and help me get out of this terrible situation and clarify what had happened by pairing me with someone who I loved, and they announced, oh, she was a virgin. They didn't tell me that. They announced, oh, he's just crazy. They didn't tell anybody that they had impacted a nerve agent to cause suffocation the way they did. So the trauma, the jealousy was more trauma at having the brain freezing up inside. The psyche was the death torture. So they're getting pho back. You go into the South Vietnamese district, and you see pho back and VW for Vietnam War and Hitler's beetle, the beetle symbol. Love bite. So they're getting pho back through the system of blowbacks, and they engineered all of these blowbacks from all of these different directions. Anger about that terrible story where Caleb was tortured to death by the ISIS. I mean, people were abandoned. When I think of the big friend, I think of Greta Thunberg being the big friend of the 13-year-old Syrian girl who was screaming and crying, we're people, for God's sakes, what are you killing us for? They're supposed to be unimportant people, but they're very important people. They're human beings, and they should be rescued from the deceit that was an outgrowth of America's containment policy and led to this linkage and this council of dictators. And they're a surprise party. They don't stand for freedom of speech. They stand for hitting you in the head suddenly from nowhere. They're a surprise attack party. And the linkage in the council of dictators that Donald Trump put together is very interesting. He started by praising Andrew Jackson, who's associated with the smallpox weapon, and then he got his friend Oliver Stone and Putin to orchestrate a North Korean bomb scare. Then he produced this linkage and dictator council in tandem with an out now, this is not a drill thing, where 4 times more Americans than were killed in the Vietnam War are now dead. And, they kill our grannies and they act like it's un-American to die of COVID. And they incited these riots, just like they covered up for the AIDS attack by, you know, talking about apartheid. And you can't talk to the police about it. It's like, you know, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? Investigate somebody using virological weapons that might lead to the perpetrators, and we can't have that, you know. And the surprise party, you know, they talk about not rescuing Kayla, but when you look at Oliver North's rule in what was known as the October Surprise, the sabotage of Jimmy Carter's rescue of the 444-day hostages in Iran, you wonder, you know, where Kayla's parents putting their hopes. You know, I mean, it's a terrible thing that she was sent to an asinine war in the first place. But people get into these groups, these fight clubs, and they don't care anymore. They go out on the street and they just want to fight. I've been cornered in Seattle by crazies who just hated the fact that I thought they didn't own the sidewalk. I wanted to keep walking. I was a peaceful person and wanted to walk down the sidewalk, and they surrounded me and wanted to punch my face in for believing that the public sidewalk belonged to everybody. It's nutty, you know. And for Amnesty International, they're just not demanding unconditional surrender to the people who pull these things. And you get these bomb bust blacks like Colin Powell, you know, who working with Tim Kaine. You know, Kaine slew you, Abel. So you have this like death squad activity in the Democratic Party who have put together a rock and a hard place that you're stuck between. The KKK and the NAACP don't like white liberals together. So you have all the soundtrack being provided by these British people with their White Russian album. Why do you think the Kennedys are being killed as a whole family? It's because Tsar Nicholas is being avenged. He was killed with his whole family. The little girl situation with the script, the Texas school book, comes from somebody named Nicholas DeBarno. They're using DeBarno, you know, what happens in the barn. She screams no. And this is the get some mentality of this angry father looking in the voyeur from the right wing, detecting all sex. I don't want to tell you what I saw in the home of Dr. Proctor, who was working through the museum network with John Schulman on constructing a persona about me, saying, "You're not special," when I reported being tortured by the KKK. Because I'm not the type to masquerade as a code worker, inundating a deaf man with notes about his fiance so I can backstab and humiliate him. I don't go into somebody's house in order to spy. But I will say that when he showed me the sacred African symbols, all I saw was a mountain of German swastikas. That's all they were. And I don't know where he got the idea that they were anything else. So you have this terrible violation of the school code happening from these rock stars who produce songs like Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite and the continuing story of Bungalow Bill, which are mockeries of the assassination of JFK. And they seem to think that because they're vulgarians, they therefore represent freedom of speech. This book by Donald and Bernard, the far right, points to the far left, and that's the way they're surrounding us. But it has a quote by John Kennedy, you know, which says, "Let's not heed counsels of fear and suspicion, and devote less energy to organizing armed bands of civilian guerrillas that are more likely to supply local vigilantes than national vigilance. Let our patriotism be reflected in the creation of confidence in one another rather than crusades of suspicion." And this is a dream for a house united by intelligent people that they've been trying to get rid of because they would rather get rid of it. Now, when you look at the man who gave me the blotter acid, his name is Wattenmaker, that has Atten. And the big friend of the 13-year-old Syrian girl, Greta Thunberg, really likes Attenborough. But you see, this is a network of filmmakers that are encrypting these charades into things like Wattenmaker and Attenborough. So you got, sort of America marching as a Roman legion to the Star of David in the way that they attack and poison us, and then say, well, both ends are burning because you're not courageous enough to tell the truth. And you wonder, what is it about this election that's so important that Trump even says it's more important than George Washington? Who's going to be removed eventually because he had slaves like Phyllis Wheatley, who was a genius, by the way. Is it that he wants us to vote in the Kennedy assassination? And you have traitors like Kevin Costner, who's claimed to be speaking for us about Kennedy, while restricting what we're really allowed to say. I mean, the whole idea of Clint Eastwood's When Double Stare and Ian Fleming's You Only Live Twice seems to be the root of the British slave patrol who claimed that John Lennon was killed. It seems like he just hoodwinked. He pretended to have been killed and left behind the script as his last will and testament for the honor of an Axis party that calls itself the Greens. They scribbled on my father's obituary. My father knew Eisenhower. I'd like to know what's going on, why nobody's looking into this.